Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Hope everybody is doing well. So this topic, how to find work's a bit of a tricky one for a couple of reasons. First off, this will vary considerably depending on where you are in the world. For example, if you were in New Zealand, I could highly recommend this amazing website called Crewlist. We were able to create a profile and add credits and links and your CV and everything else, and most importantly, browse job listings. And I don't just mean stuff like YouTube editor or, social media editor and roles like that. I mean proper full production, post-production gigs on, large stuff, like Ash vs. Evil Dead and various other things like that. And there's lots of them there regularly posted. Now, well, in the UK and other nations, there are lots and lots of sites like that. That's kind of the problem. There's an oversaturation of resources like that. And because of that, large productions have kind of just stopped using them, or they're spread across them, and so it's not quite clear which one is the best one to use, and they're all kind of paid, whereas Crewlist is mostly free. There is a paid version now, but you can quite easily use it for years free, as I did. So there's one reason why it's tricky is the variances between countries, and secondly, this will vary wildly depending on what your experiences have been in the industry thus far, and what experiences you already have had, in terms of your skill level, whether you went to film school or not, whether you worked in the industry or not, and more importantly, who you know, since who you know and what contacts you have or don't have, as the case may be, can make finding work, a hell of a lot easier or a hell of a lot more difficult. It just, really depends on where you're at. So because of all this, everything I'll have to say on this topic is inevitably going to be, very subjective, just based on my own experiences, more of what I would do in this situation. I'm not guaranteeing it will work for you. It's just, how I would do it, I guess. If only I had a series specifically for that type of thing, this would be perfect for that. Right, now another thing that can vary and how this can be different is depending on what job you're after. So I'm going to break this down into 3 categories and then we'll take it from there. So the first is going to be entry-level assisting roles. So this is mostly for people who are just starting out in the industry, you've just graduated film school and you're looking to get into post-production, or you've been working in assistant editing for a little while, but you're moving country or city or into an entirely different place, and you're looking to how to get started up in that new place. The second category will be more seasoned assistant editor roles. This is your first assistant, almost like your VFX editor as well, and even second assistant on larger productions. This is just going to be your better paying, larger scale jobs, for once you've got a bunch of experience under your belt, once you kind of know what you're doing, how to make that step up. Then lastly, of course, we've got cutting gigs. These are the most tricky both to get, and they're kind of the more tricky to discuss, because they're both easier and harder depending on whether you've done the first 2 roles in the past. In some ways it can be more tricky, in some ways it can be easier. It just all depends on what you're doing. Jeez, it's going to be a hard topic to talk about. Okay, here we go. Entry-level gigs. Right, now those of you that have watched my how I got into film and TV industry video on YouTube will have a fair idea of what I'm about to say here, but it all boils down to one key piece of information, and that is that on paper, at this point in your career, you have nothing to offer. I would forget kind of applying by, batch dropping CVs everywhere. Because you don't really have a level of experience or credits or job experience that's relevant yet in the industry to mention. All you have is your film degree, and there is a mass wave of graduates every single year. And honestly, there's plenty of people in the industry who didn't go to film school and are doing perfectly well. It's one of those industries where it's completely not essential at all that you went to university. In fact, some ways it's easier if you didn't, if you learned on the job. So instead, what I propose, what I think will mean more, is actually being seen. And this means going to any networking events that you can track down through local film groups, Facebook groups. Here locally to myself at the moment, we've got Screen Scotland, we've got Screen Skills, we have the British Film Institute. When I was back in New Zealand, there was the Directors and Editors Guild. There was a number of other, I think there was 8 guilds in New Zealand for different specialties. There was also the New Zealand Film Commission who put on some events and whatnot. There's always networking events in all the major film centres that you can go to and try and network. And so I strongly encourage you to go to these events, speak to people, make an impression, actually talk to people. I would also advise you to find directories of film crew, preferably to try and find, editors or even assistants who are doing what you want to do. And just try and get in touch with them. In New Zealand, I use one called the Datebook, which was a full directory of all the film professionals. There's one here in Scotland called Filmbang. But if you can't find a counterpart to that, wherever you are in the world, there's also IMDB Pro, which is a really useful tool where you can sort of look up the crew just based on the credits of any given production. And quite often they have a direct contact for that crew member there that you can just reach out to that way. And, try and reach out to as many as you can. When I first came out of film school, I was reaching out to a lot of editors directly and sort of explaining where I was and where I wanted to be. Can I, do you mind if I come in and shadow you for the day? And the important thing to remember here is that you're not asking, for a job. You're definitely not asking any of these people for a job. Be a bit more subtle about it. Ask them things like, can I buy you a coffee? Can I pick your brain about the industry and, the landscape of film and television in our city? Ask them things like, can I come in and shadow you one day? Would that be okay? Do you require an assist at some point in the future or anything like that? Can I help you? You don't want to seem like you're being a burden. You don't want to ask for favors. But at the same time, you're trying to see what you can get out of it. But if you go in and you don't ask for a lot, you're just asking for a cup of coffee straight up, then, that's, most people aren't really going to say no to that. In fact, you'll be surprised as to what you can get just by asking. Most people are quite happy to help if you give them the opportunity to help you. So, reach out and talk to as many people as you can. If you feel up to it, call them. Like if they hear your voice or if they see your face, they're much more likely to remember you than if it's an email. I did both. I called a lot of editors and I emailed them, and only a handful of them got back to me, but it was enough to trigger things forward, and I ended up with a job at a post facility. And from there, it led to a lot more assisting work and, this beautiful, beautiful career in film and television. But let's move along to your proper assistant editor gigs. So say you've contacted enough of your editors, you've got your foot in the door, you've got some assisting work, you've got some more experience in the industry at this point, and now you're ready for a space up. We've done some assisting, maybe you've worked in a post facility for a bit, you're ready to get into the good stuff. So for these gigs, it's where you want to begin developing relationships, or ideally calling upon relationships that you've built during these past credits that you've been building up. During every job since the beginning when you first got into the film industry, it really does pay to, it sounds corny, but it really, really does pay to talk to as many people as you can, whether that be at wrap parties or in the production office. And, work hard, always stay later than the boss. Try to come in earlier if you're able to. Make an impression, so much so that when you call people up and mention that you're looking for work, then if they have something going, they'll want you to bring, they'll want to bring you onto that because, that impression's left in their head of you being a hard worker and of you being dedicated to the craft. Just as an aside, something that's very important to remember, I think, in film and television is that there may often be times on certain jobs where you feel like it's really quiet. There's not a lot going on. Maybe you're just waiting on a bunch of exports, or maybe you've completely finished all the tasks you were given for the day and everybody else has gone home and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just head off early. I strongly discourage you from doing that. And if you have to go, by all means, you have to go. But I would highly recommend you take that time instead and practice the craft. Take the scenes, the bins that the editors are going to use to cut the footage and cut them yourself. Show it to the editor, get some feedback, or find something else. Reorganize their music bins, their sound effects bins. Think of something else that you can do, because it's those extra tasks. It's like going that extra mile. Doing things that you weren't asked to do, that is what will get you recommended. That is why people remember you, and that is what will make people call you to bring you onto a job, without you having to cold call and look for jobs. It really, really does go a long way. So, if you're really quiet at work, don't ever just, sit around or pull out a book or watch YouTube. Find something to do with the job that, you can get busy with. But getting back to finding your assistant gigs, now that you have a few credits under your belt, I would strongly recommend you start making your online presence. This is the time to make your Crewlist, your talent manager, your IMDB, insert region-specific website here, and get a profile and deck it out with your very best credits and your experience. Now it's time to start making yourself look good on paper. And I definitely say make yourself look good on the paper because once you've made this profile or your CV or whatever else that you're going to send to people when you're looking for a job, have a read through it, have a look through it, and ask yourself if, how it looks. Would you hire this person? Do you like the way it looks? Don't mention that short film you made in your last year at uni, unless it's something that you're really amazed by and you're proud of still to this day. If you entered it into, some big festivals and it won, then by all means. But in general, you want to be mentioning industry standard productions, relevant work experience that will inspire confidence in these employers and make them want to bring you onto their production. Now, once you've got that online presence sorted, the next thing to do is to get on social media and try and find things like Facebook groups to do with what it is that you want to do. There's a million different groups online that begin with "I need an editor UK, I need an editor New York, I need an editor LA," and various other things like that. I need an assistant editor. A lot of them, I will admit, are, kind of looking for YouTube editors or social media editors or that kind of thing, which I personally don't recommend. A lot of people do it, but the pay tends to be very low for an obscene amount of work, and the skills for that will never translate to the pro film and television industry, so I don't recommend it. But there is inevitably some Facebook groups that are, a community of people who work in the industry who are sharing jobs left, right, and center in these groups. I have had more jobs through social media in the last 3 or 4 years than I have from any other source. It is an invaluable tool that you really can't prop up enough. In fact, there's been a number of times when I've desperately wanted to delete my Facebook and get rid of it because I kind of don't like it and I don't like having it, and it's such a distraction, but so much of the work is there. For example, there's a group called, I think it's TV Talent Scotland, that I'm in at the moment, and I've had a number of, jobs come out of that, so definitely get on those. Oh, and lastly, if you're intent on making a career in assistant editing, if you enjoy assistant editing and the organization and managing posts, and you want to be a good first assistant or something like that, I cannot recommend Master the Workflow enough. They are a group made up of professional assistant editors based in LA that have worked on everything from Marvel projects to Star Wars projects and like the biggest jobs you can think of, and they are very, very good at what they do. They have a number of courses on there that are paid, but they will provide absolutely essential skills, especially if you're going to be working on larger American productions, and things that I don't cover on the channel. Now, a lot of the stuff that, they will teach, because they have a big course going through the assistant editor skills from beginning to end, and a lot of this is on the channel, like ingesting and syncing and organizing an Avid project and all that kind of stuff. But there's a number of things there that I deliberately didn't put on the channel because I learned it from them and it felt like it would devalue them by me hosting the same information. For example, building and maintaining a code book, which is something I only ever really do in American jobs. In New Zealand and in the UK, it's not really a thing. But production companies and insurance companies in America kind of demand them. Like it's a record of all of the footage, and all the metadata and details of it that can be cross-referenced and searched and exported out in all kinds of ways, very easily. It is, a very invaluable tool, particularly for visual effects editors, and particularly if you're going to be doing turnovers to VFX. I know I have my spreadsheet that I've shown on the channel, but this is a far, far better method. And they have a course specifically dealing in code books where they give you a template one that you can just use in all your projects. And that, I think it's about $200-ish US. And you can do that online, and then you get invited into a Facebook group with those guys afterwards. So if you're looking for a career in assistant editing, and it can be a very good, very rewarding career, you know, where you'll meet lots of people and you can go very far in the industry and you can get paid very well, then I can't recommend them enough. You know, there's certain things where they're the only ones teaching it and they're the only place to really go to learn that well. Righty-ho, the tough one, cutting gigs. Now, this topic is quite murky to tackle because this is where the film and TV industry shows its true colours, since you can't just see a job posting for an editor. It doesn't really work like that. It's not like, you know, employed jobs where you can see a listing on the company's website, you send in a CV and apply. There is some of that for assistant editing on, you know, places like Mandy.com and Crewlist. But, you know, for an editor, that doesn't really happen, at least not most of the time. Our industry is about people. You know, it's not so much contacts, you know, it's not just names and details on a phone, it's relationships. It's, you know, if you're going to be editing a project, then the director and the writer are trusting you. And it's a very intimate trust for you to help bring their vision of this story to life. For you to piece this story together and work with them over months to sculpt it and create it. And if you can do that once and come out of it with a good relationship with that director, then they enjoyed the process and they're happy with what they came out with, it's very likely that you're going to be hired again. Getting our jobs as an editor or a cinematographer or any head of department really is all about the relationships and the impressions that you leave on people and whether they want to work with you again. Now, getting those first jobs in order to start building those relationships by doing those edits can be tricky. But again, it just comes back to going out and talking to people. Have a drink, you know, buy a drink for directors that you want to work with. You know, track them down, storytellers and filmmakers that you want to work with, that you want to edit with. Now, obviously, I'm not saying jump to the A-list. You can't just randomly call up Steven Spielberg. But try and find people in your area, in your kind of wheelhouse that isn't unattainable for you to talk to them and reach out. You know, even if you just happen to meet these people at an industry event, go over and talk to them. As I said, buy them a drink, talk about your favorite sports team. You know, tell them about where you're from, tell them about the jobs you've done before, tell them how you got into film and television industry. You know, talk down political parties together. You know, whatever keeps the conversation moving so that they'll, you know, remember you. You know, if small talk isn't something that you're good at, it's maybe worth practicing because it definitely does help. People remember having conversations with you. They'll remember talking to someone. They don't necessarily remember an email that they've read because a lot of these people probably get a lot of emails to go through. And when the chance does come around for you to cut a decent project for an editing job, make sure that you're ready. You know, hone the craft in the only way that works, by doing it. You know, during your time as an assistant, cut the rushes every single chance you get and make sure to show it to your editor when they're not too busy and they'll give you feedback. You know, most of them are quite happy to do so. If they're not, then just cut them yourself and keep it to yourself whenever you have the time. You know, reach out to any other friends that you do have in the industry, people that you will have met as an AE or any other jobs that you've done, and, you know, ask them about any projects they're doing on the side, if they're making short films, if they have any passion projects going that you can cut, that you can build up. You know, I'm not going to say a reel because I don't quite believe in a reel for an editor. It doesn't quite work. You want to build up a base of things you have cut, you know, a library, a catalog of things that you've cut that you can show. You know, and not all of this you can show, a lot of it because of festivals and stuff you can't just have on a website or whatnot, but you can maybe bring it on a laptop and show people if they ask to see things that you've cut. You know, very rarely is someone ever going to give you a job to edit if you haven't edited something that they can see. Unless that thing that you've edited is, you know, something very well known on IMDB and they just don't have the opportunity to see it, but the credit is big enough that that gets you in the door. You know, point being, just, you know, cut whenever you get the chance. You know, that's the only way to get better at anything, is by practicing it. You know, so whether this is entering 40-hour film competitions, making short films, heck, writing and directing your own, even if it's just to give yourself content to cut, is still definitely worth doing. You know, even if the stuff that you're putting out sucks, even if the edits and the final short films that are coming out are terrible, and you don't ever want any human soul to watch this abomination of screen trash, and trust me, I've cut a couple of those projects, you'll still inevitably learn invaluable lessons from having worked on them. Trust me. You know, there's a couple of 40-hour film competitions and film projects that I've been on as an editor that I swear to God I didn't even want myself credited on them because it was that bad. But it was that bad. But I learned very valuable lessons from working on those, and so I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. It was definitely worth doing. You know, absolutely nothing beats practice when it comes to getting better at anything. So just keep plugging in, plugging away, and you'll get your chance. You know, about 11 years in post, and I firmly believe that what you put out into the world will come back around to you. So if you're always at networking events, you're always talking to people, you're mentioning to execs and producers and directors when you're an assistant and you're on jobs that you want to cut, that this is something that you want to do. You're saying this to other editors. If you're always putting that out to people, you're making sure it's known. You know, not being naggy. You don't be just saying it all the time. Don't be like, give me a job, I want to cut. You know, you're just putting it out there that this is what you want. You're making sure that people know that you're keen and that you want to do this. And then when an opportunity comes, for example, like to cut, bonus scenes of the show that's just going to end up on the DVD, you know, that often goes to assistant editors, and that's an amazing chance to cut something that's going to be seen by people. So somewhere, somehow, an opportunity to cut and an opportunity for a job will find you. You know, it won't necessarily be a job offer, but it'll be an opportunity in that direction. So all you have to do is keep your eye out for these opportunities. Make sure you don't miss them, and then just make sure you're there to answer the door when it comes a knocking. But I think that's me already tired out of advice for tonight at least. So I'm going to go and finish my whiskey before I go to bed. But if you guys can think of anything else on this topic, if there's anything else particularly that you'd like to know that you think I might be able to help with in any way, please do message me. Let me know. Feel free to email me anytime. You can message me through Patreon or the Facebook group or wherever else that you feel like you can reach me. Send a message. Probably email will be the best bet always to get me, generally. But whenever you guys send a message, I'll get back to it as soon as I can. Now, no matter what it is, you know, if you're one of these guys that's paid money to join any of these memberships at any level, I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. As I'm sure a number of you have realized by now, a lot of the time I'll get back to you right away. You know, time zones, forgiving. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can, because I'm, very thankful for this community, and I'm very enjoying this Avid Assistant project, and, I like helping people out. I always have done, so if there's anything that I can do, to help you out and to advise in any way based on my own experiences, just fire questions at me, and I'll do my best. But as for tonight, I really need to go get myself some kip. Because I need to get back in the cutting room tomorrow and somehow find time this week to make a video for the YouTube channel, because, didn't release one last week. So yeah, got heaps and heaps to do, but right now, just going to finish this. See you guys.